Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. And today I am probably doing one of the most important videos that I have ever done. And that is how to defend against a Russian cyber attack. And unfortunately, I think we're all watching the news and just seeing for the last 48 hours what exactly is going on in Ukraine. And this obviously is a huge, huge international problem that we have right now. And so with that, these are the steps to immediately take in the event of impending attacks. And you'll note that I actually put the date and time here where I am. It's around 5 o'clock or so p.m. in Chicago on a Thursday, which means it is Friday morning, about 1 a.m. or so in Kyiv. And as the news stands right now at this time, which is why I'm timestamping this, Ukraine still stands. The Russians have invaded. They have been bombarding. They are attempting to take Kyiv as it is. Kyiv is blowing bridges. They are essentially arming their citizens to repel Russia. We don't know where things are going on. And by the time you hear this or see this, or if you see this a week later, it may be an entirely different landscape. Ukraine may be independent as always, or they may be part of Russia. We just don't know. But because we are seeing essentially the Biden administration and others, leaders around the world, talking about various sanctions in Russia, what has been bandied about is an increase in cyber warfare, an increase in the potentials essentially for running cyber attacks against Russia. And so the fear that intelligence agencies around the globe have is that Russia will retaliate and actually start hitting infrastructure here in the United States, our allies, everybody around the world. So this applies to essentially anybody in the globe in a country that at the moment is opposing essentially the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So be aware that you may come under threat. And with that, let's start essentially with the immediate steps that you should take. But before we do that, I think it's important to note that this is not comprehensive and that has to be intentional. I'm sure there are going to be some cybersecurity folks and colleagues of mine that are watching this and saying, oh, Nick, you should have mentioned this, you should have mentioned that. The point is that if we understand we have an impending attack and we have a limited amount of time to execute on things to essentially harden our infrastructure, harden our systems and ourselves as fast as possible, we can't start going down the entire comprehensive checklist of NIST or ISO or any one of those. We have to look and focus on the immediate problems that we have with our setups, our businesses, our homes, all those kinds of things. So this is designed to give essentially businesses as well as home users a good idea of what to expect and what you can do to essentially defend yourself. And with that, let's start with number one. First things first is update all critical infrastructure, operating systems, software, all that kind of stuff. So you might have firewalls that are defending your business or your home. Make sure they are completely up to date. The CISA, or Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Administration, put out a list of known, essentially known hardware and software that Russian intelligence likes to attack. And so, for example, FortiGate VPNs are on that list, as is Microsoft Exchange servers and a whole bunch of other products. So make sure no matter what products you have in your life, you're keeping them up to date. We update primarily to fix and patch vulnerabilities so that essentially our products can't be exploited, whether they're hardware or software. This goes for iPhones and Androids, Windows and Mac and Linux and everything else, your wireless access points in your life. Update everything, not to mention that software you've been running. If you're on an older version of Adobe or whatever, make sure it's all up to date. You don't want to allow a simple vulnerability that you could have patched exploit your system or knock it out. That, I think, is an important message. The other thing, too, to remember, and point number two, is enable multi-factor authentication on everything that you can. Office 365, financial institutions, heck, even your Facebook and Amazon and Twitter and all those kinds of things. Almost everything has multi-factor authentication. If you're a business, you can essentially start down this road planning for later on, not right now, because again, we have impending attacks, planning for a better, more holistic identity management solution that is out there. But for right now, if you have multi-factor authentication enabled, you are much harder to break into, and it is low-hanging fruit. And you can get free authenticators from Authy or Google or Microsoft or a slew of other known good providers of this and start essentially enabling this for free and immediately in your life. That is a very important thing to remember. So please make sure you're doing that. Next up is ensuring that all of your devices and computers have uniform threat detection. This really talks about asset management, meaning, do you know where all of your computers, your hardware, your phones, your tablets, do you know where they are? Do you know if they're up to date? Do you know if they have your endpoint detection response system or antivirus or whatever kind of threat detection systems you're running? This is so important, because that one device in your office or your home that doesn't have any kind of threat detection wrapped around it or any kind of understanding of threat, or you just totally forgot it's plugged in somewhere and running, and we see that all the time when we're doing assessments, you've got to make sure everything is up to date. Everything has good threat detection, not just at the firewall level. Try to get endpoint detection response or antivirus or whatever you can, whether your business or home, and there you go. Make sure everything has uniform threat detection. Also, double check your backups. This is something I talked about recently on stage, where studies have shown that something like 50% of backups don't restore properly or have issues, and something like 60% of all companies don't actually back up all of their critical data, whether it's for space reasons or they missed it or whatever that is. These are huge numbers. Even in your personal life, make sure you've got good backups, ideally in the cloud, that are separated from your network, because if you come under cyber attack and get knocked out, cloud may be your only lifeline. So make sure those backups are safe, make sure those backups are secure, make sure you're encrypting those backups as well. But also, like I said, make sure your backups actually work and they are comprehensive, because they may be your only lifeline, if you come under attack from whoever, and obviously right now we're talking about the Russians, but literally this applies to basically any impending cyber attack if you know one is coming from absolutely anywhere. The next up is essentially vigilance. Let everybody know, your employees, your friends, your family, essentially to maintain vigilance and look out for threats. Essentially, Russian intelligence is excellent at cyber attacks, but they're also excellent at disinformation campaigns. And as I am watching the news and this is unfolding, we are seeing disinformation campaigns being run against the Ukrainian people. Basically, there's a wave of posts on social media and all that saying, oh, Ukrainian soldiers are surrendering and just welcoming the Russian troops in. That is coming directly from Russia, according to multiple intelligence sources around the globe. Here in the United States or other countries, we're not going to get those messages, but we might get phishing attempts that look like, click here to donate to the Ukrainian relief cause, or, click here to tell Putin to go to hell, or whatever it is, or maybe even pro-Russia stuff. We don't know. But the point is that if it looks like phishing, it probably is phishing. If it is immediately coming off of the heels of this disaster, it may not be legitimate, not to mention fake login attempts, all these kinds of things. Maintain that vigilance. And hopefully, especially in the company side, you've had anti-phishing training for quite some time, but you've got to alert everybody that, hey, we may be under attack. You've got to maintain vigilance. And if you see something, say something. Company culture is so important in that. And I can't tell you how many times we've walked into a data breach that could have been basically mitigated vastly if the employee just simply spoke up, but they didn't want to because they were afraid they'd get into trouble. Let your employees know, let your friends and family know, hey, if we've got a problem, let us know. We'd rather have a false positive than something completely knock us out. And in worst case scenario, you can simply unplug the computer or unplug the internet and stop an attack. That is so important. So make sure everybody in your life, employees, family, friends, etc., everybody is vigilant. Next up is a little more specific. If you have a next generation firewall, so maybe at home you've got like a Bitdefender box, or one of those products out there like Accio now from Palo Alto, all of these home products are now coming out. If you've got those, or if you've got next generation firewalls in your business, and if you're a business, you absolutely should. Also, identity management solutions, you can turn on geo blocking. Basically, that says any incoming traffic from outside of your country. So for me, the United States, I can say no IP addresses, public IP addresses registered to any country in the world, from Russia all the way to Canada, which is right next door to us. None of them are allowed to see my firewall. The traffic will be dropped. It will be rejected. That will protect you, because oftentimes countries like to leverage outside countries for attack. It's not perfect, but it may mitigate that. Same with identity management solutions, meaning if somebody's attempting to log in outside of the country, or even, let's say here in the United States, your state, it will simply be rejected because they are not where you are. These are very important. And also turn on that logging, because if you do come under cyber attack, that may be a very valuable piece for understanding and examining what happened, for forensics, possibly even for law enforcement or even intelligence, if the Russians are suspected of hitting you. So make sure your logging is turned in terms of verbose or verbosity, I guess, all the way up. Very important. And the last one is very specific. If you have industrial control systems or home automation or connected systems, think of your Google Nests and all of that, try to manually test those for offline use. Meaning, if your network gets knocked out and the internet goes out, will those industrial control systems keep running your machines or whatever you're using ICS for? Or will your Nest keep working, if it is offline? So for example, I have essentially an IoT, HVAC thermostat, I think that's what it's called, thermostat, in my home. I keep it offline all the time. I almost never connect it to the internet because I don't need to, but I know that it would run offline if my internet went out. Therefore, I could still get heating and cooling or whatever it is that I need to do. This is obviously very important for manufacturing, very important for industry, but it's also important for home users as well. So make sure that those things that essentially keep whatever it is in your life or business running can work without the internet, without having the ability to contact and communicate with other devices in your network or the cloud. So, so important. Those are the 7 core steps that essentially I think anybody should take in their lives to prepare for what all intelligence is saying could be retaliatory attacks by Russian intelligence and their cutouts. We have to be prepared. We have to be vigilant for that. But we also have to prepare for possible environmental attacks as well, meaning as we are looking at essentially a retaliatory attack, cyber attack in the middle of a cyber warfare, it's not the same as ransomware, meaning they're not going to get in and spend a whole lot of time in your network, looking for the stuff. How much money can we make? They're there to knock you out. They're there to destroy data. They're there to do all of those kinds of things, possibly plant infections for later. And so what we are looking at is making sure that the overarching critical infrastructure in your country essentially is hardened. And if it's not, what I've listed here are the potentials that you may see in your daily life or in your business life. So think about this: a loss of internet because your internet service provider gets knocked out. That could be considered critical infrastructure, and now you're out. Maybe get a second internet provider to try and mitigate that. A loss of electricity. In 2014, Russian intelligence hit a power plant in Ukraine, knocking it out for 80,000 people. This is a very real possibility. Loss of water and wastewater availability. I've done videos on this, how at least here in the United States, we have over 50,000 water and wastewater districts, and a lot of them are insanely vulnerable. So we had a case in Oldsmar, Florida, where somebody attempted to introduce lye into the water system that could have poisoned a town of 15,000. So this is things that we really need to understand. Same with loss of traditional communication systems like telephone systems. When the Russian intelligence in 2014 knocked out that power plant, they also knocked out the phone system, and they made 80,000 people deaf and blind. A lot of intelligence agencies think that was a dry run for future cyber attacks. And here we are, they are actually invading Ukraine. The other thing to talk about is disruption of satellite services as well. So consider possibly your GPS going out, or even if you have, let's say, a coax cable connection in your house, a lot of those providers receive that data at a local center via satellite. So your GPS may go out, or location services or streaming services. All those kinds of things may be hit, not to mention disruption and outages of apps and services of local governments as well. And I just realized I merged those two. There should be a third bullet point there. I apologize for that. But apps and services, imagine if they knocked out all of Amazon's AWS. Everything would go down in your life, from Starbucks to Target to Home Depot to streaming services like Netflix and Prime, everything. Understand we have to prepare for these things as well. And that last merged one that I missed, and I apologize for that, is disruption of local government services. What if you can't pay your water bill or your parking tickets, or the government essentially, loses 911 call center capability, for emergencies? These are things that we have to plan for however you see fit in your life. as possibilities. Now, I'm not saying all of this to be doom and gloom. The reason why I'm saying this is because intelligence is giving us essentially probability that this could be a credible threat. And as the Biden administration, as well as France and UK and Germany and Israel and all of our other allies start looking at potentially launching cyber attacks as sanctions against this invasion of Ukraine by Russia, their retaliation is a very real possibility. So I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here. I am essentially trying to keep you safe. And with that, thank you very much. And please stay safe. And as always, I'm not going to go through my whole preamble. Just feel free to follow me wherever you can. And also, I would really appreciate it if you could help me share this video, because I think this is going to be one of the most important videos that I've done. So with that, good luck, stay safe. And quite frankly, Ukraine, we are with you.